Hello, everybody, and welcome once again back to the channel. So, in today's video, I wanted to show clips on behalf of how dangerous it could be from time to time. And on that note, these clips via TikTok, each and every last clip is on behalf of TikTok. There are around a good 4 Black women that are telling their dating stories, dating horror stories. And you could also say this is a spinoff to my last video that I made the other day on behalf of why people shall stay off of dating apps. You can also say, in a sense, it's a sequel or a part 2 to that very same video of why people should stay off of dating apps. Anyways, and without further ado, I'm going to cut straight to the chase instead of doing a monologue like I would do in all my other videos, all my previous videos usually. A monologue that could be sometimes upwards to 10 minutes. Once again, I'm going to cut to the chase, folks. And here is the first clip.
Tell you about the scariest dating experience I've ever had. So when I was in my 20s, I was single forever. So I decided to get on this dating app. I think it was like blackpeoplemeet.com. Anybody remember that? So I'm on this app and I'm talking to this guy. I lived in Richmond, Virginia, and he lived in like Indiana. So it wasn't too far away, but it was like, we had like maybe a 2-hour distance between us. And so we decided we're going to meet up and we're going to meet halfway. Now, unfortunately, I did not check the weather before I left. And as I'm driving halfway, it's a snowstorm. And by this time it was like, I was too far away to like try to drive back home. And then I was like, I'm not going to his place. And so he said, well, let's just meet up and I'll come to you. And so I'm like, okay. And so we're meeting up, we have dinner, and then it's snowing like crazy. And I'm realizing, how am I going to get home? And so he's like, well, let's just get a hotel for the night or whatever. And I'm like, dude, I'm not sleeping with you, but we can get a hotel because like, we just got to get 2 beds. So we get a hotel, we get 2 beds, all the things. And I'm in my bed, we're watching TV and whatever. Go to sleep, wake up, and here he is on me on my bed. And so like, listen, I'm a strategic thinker today, but I was strategic thinking back then too. And I had this thought in my head, oh, say something that makes him like not want to touch you. This is kind of crazy. And I said, you might want to stop because I have something to tell you. And so he stops and he's like, what? And I was like, well, I'm not going to tell you until we leave because I don't want you to be upset, but you might want to stop. And so I can tell he's like nervous about like what's going on. Does she have AIDS? What's going on? He's like freaking out. And me, I'm like, I just need to get out of this hotel room. Now, I did have something to tell him that he did not know, which, yeah. So then when we get to the gas station, he said, so what is it? What do you have to tell me? And I said, well, I'm a virgin. And he was like, what? I said, I'm a virgin, so that's why I couldn't mess with you last night. And he was like, wait a minute, I thought you had AIDS. And then I said to him, I was like, well, I knew I needed to tell you that so you would get off of me because otherwise you would have done, I don't know, whatever. And I never spoke to him ever again.
So let me show you some of the other clips, and these are parts of my favorites. They, by the way, folks, happen to have a part 2 if I could find them. So what I'm going to do is go to my downloads. Actually, back to StreamYard.
So,
Well, this is part 2 out of 2 parts to another clip.
So
This is part 1, folks.
it's time for a story about my dating life. Yeah, so let's just get right into it. So, I've been in therapy. My therapist is like, hey, Grace, yeah, if you want to have a boyfriend or if you want to have a husband, that means you have to go on dates. I'm like, okay, valid, sure. So, matched with this guy on Bumble. I'm like, he's a bit eclectic, a little weird, but that ain't ever stopped me from, going out and having a good time. So I'm like, okay, cool. We set a date for originally Friday, yesterday, but he had to cancel because there was something wrong with his car. Sure, fine, whatever, things happen. Um, so he's like, but I really would like to see you. How about tomorrow? I'm like, okay, cool. So I get dressed, I get ready, like this is the face that I had when I met him. And so I get there. And before I met him, he prefaced, he's like, hey, yeah, um, I've gained some weight from the pictures from my profile. I'm like, sure, whatever. People gain weight, people lose weight, it doesn't even matter. So I get there and I look at him and I'm like, you're a catfish. You're literally a catfish. So I get down, I sit down, I'm talking to him, and the typical questions. Hey, how was your day? Um, what do you do? He started asking about my family, and I'm like, this is a lot for me. I'm like, I'm cool with my family. I love them. They love me. And then he's like, you're so calm. You have this really calming, like, spirit. Like, you just seem really calm. And I'm like, thanks. He's like, he's like, then he started asking more questions about me and my life. And I'm just like, I've just always been this way. I'm in therapy. That helps a lot. He's like, oh, that's it. That must be it. And I'm like, okay. But mind y'all, before I sat down, when I was walking up to the bar, the bartender was looking at me like, girl, what are you doing here? So I'm not feeling it. I'm ready to go. I want to go home. So I'm like, okay, cool. So he's like, I'm going to get up and go to the restroom. I'm like, okay, cool. He gets up. Both of the bartenders come over to me and they're like, hey, are you okay? They're like, this is a signal, and they're gesturing to like say, if you need me to get you out of here, like put your hair behind your ear and we'll get you out of here. And I'm like, huh? I quick part two.
With that being said, here's part two right here.
I'm talking to the bartender, and mind you, before, like, she literally was looking at me so crazy, and I was trying to figure out what was wrong with her. So, so it finally clicked. I'm like, oh, he comes here a lot and does this a lot. And the lady like shook her head because he was walking back up to the bar. And so I'm like, okay. She's like, do you need help? I said, no, I got it. I'm gonna wrap this up real quick. So he comes over to me. He's like, yeah, I don't really know how to say this, but I'm like, well, just get it off your chest. He's like, I feel like we would be really great friends. We would be, you know, we would be great friends. He's like, like platonic. I'm like, keep it a buck with you, bro. I don't need any more friends. And I wasn't opposed. I'm not opposed to making new friends with anyone, but the fact that you're just so unaware of how horrible and like strange you are that you make people feel uncomfortable enough for the bartenders to have signal a signal for the women you bring to this bar so they can escape you. Sir, you just made me waste my gas in this economy. And my makeup is very expensive. Have a nice life.
So there should be two more clips to show on behalf of this topic. I'm going to share my screen now.
I once went on a date with a guy, ABC Cosina, and he showed up with an overnight.
Story time. Okay, so it is my fifth date with this guy.
I met him at his job. I know where he works. I know where he lives. He lives near my sister, who is a cop, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. He knows this. On our first date, he sent me a screenshot of his license. So I am thinking this guy is a great guy. He's safe. I'm cool. Right. So, fifth date, we've had these plans for about a week and a half. We are supposed to go to a lounge on a Saturday night when we both have had events during the day. So he had a long event during the day that was far out, um, out like in the suburbs of New York. I was supposed to have a football game for my little cousin in Brooklyn. Didn't wind up having the football game, but this football game wind up, I think, saving me because my son and my uncle and my two cousins were supposed to go to the football game. So in his mind, I'm spending all day with my son, my uncle, and my two male cousins and my one little boy cousin who's playing this football game. So I'm supposed to be in the house with them, and he's gonna call me, and then I'm gonna go meet him. It gets 9:40, and he hasn't called me yet. So I call him, and I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, I'm in Queens," and I'm like, "Well, we're supposed to be meeting up. What's the holdup? What's going on?" And he's like, "Oh, where's your family?" And I'm like, "Oh, they went to get food because it's quiet in my house and he can't hear them." But my son wound up getting in a car accident that day, and he never came. But something told me not to tell him that like my son didn't come and that my family wasn't here. So I wound up not going to the football game, but I didn't want to tell him that. I just said, "Oh, they went to get food." And normally I wouldn't do that. I would have told him, but something told me just to not tell him. And I didn't want to just go into everything that happened because my son got in a car accident. It was a lot. But anyway, so I'm like, "Oh, they went to get food. They'll be back. But by the time they get back, I'll probably be on my way to you." And he's like, "No, don't leave yet. I'm going to get in an Uber. I'm going to head to the restaurant. I'll call you when I get there and I'll send an Uber for you." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, bet, no problem." So like 7 minutes later, he texts me and he's like, "Hey, I've been out all day at this event. Can I come to your house and change my clothes? Because I'm sweaty and I just would like to change my clothes before we go out." And I'm like, against my better judgment, I'm like, "Okay, fine." So I send him my address. He comes to my house. So as soon as he gets here, I'm like ready, like all dressed up, dolled up, hair done, makeup, nails, heels, like I'm ready to go. And I'm look at me looking in my bedroom, like y'all can see it. But I'm like, "You go ahead in my bedroom and you change your clothes, and I'll be out here ready to go." So he's like hemming and hawing. He doesn't go in my bedroom. He's like, "No, let me sit down for a minute. Let me talk." I'm like, "No, go ahead, change so we can leave." He's like, "So when is your family coming back?" And I'm like, "I don't know. They're gonna come back whenever they come back." I'm like, "They got keys, so it doesn't matter." And he's like, "Oh, they got keys?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they have keys." And he's like, "Oh man." And I'm like, "Go ahead and go change your clothes. What's the problem?" And I see him open his bag. He opens the bag. He has slippers. He has a bathrobe. He has pajamas. I'm like, "What's going on? Like, what is this?" And he's like, "Oh man, I thought I was just going to spend the night." Excuse me? That was never the plan. You were never invited to spend the night. I never made any inclination that I wanted you to even be in my home. You weren't even supposed to be here now. We were supposed to meet at the restaurant. So he gets a little like agitated and he's like, "Oh, well, I didn't know your family was going to be here." It doesn't matter if my family was going to be here. I don't have to tell you the trappings of my life. You're not my man. So I don't understand why you're getting upset. He starts to get a little belligerent, like his body language gets very aggressive, his tone is extremely aggressive. So I have to remind him, "Listen, my sister that lives up there by you, my sister literally lives like right by him, is a cop. Don't get aggressive with me. Like my dad was in the military. There's firearms in this home for me to protect myself, so please don't get aggressive." And when I tell y'all, I totally believe that between that and also telling him, and my son and my uncle are going to be back here in any moment, I think I narrowly escaped being assaulted. And, I didn't want to tell anybody this story for a minute because I was like, everybody's going to blame me. Everybody's going to say I shouldn't have let him in my home. But you cannot have your cake and eat it too. Men cannot keep telling us that we can't act like they're animals and we can't act like they're monsters, but then at the same time tell us we should have chose better when someone gives us no signs that they're a monster. And then we see the monster when it's about to come out. And it wasn't until later on when I was talking to my younger sister who dates more than I do and who dates on the apps. She was like, "Girl, you were never going out with him that night." There was never a plan for y'all to go out. Do you realize that? That was his plan the whole time. That's why he came with a bag. That's why he didn't ask you on the phone before he got in the Uber. He texted you when he was already in the Uber so you would feel pressure to say yes. And I was like, oh my God. Because I haven't been dating. I have been in 2 back-to-back relationships for over 7 years. I have been out of the dating pool. So from that point on, I made the decision that I will never ever let a man in my house unless he's my man. That will never happen again. I will never allow a man in this apartment unless he is my man. We are dating exclusively because that was scary. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I narrowly escaped being assaulted.
And ladies and gentlemen, I'm really referring specifically to my ladies, because there has been so many other horror stories of ladies that would usually meet men off of dating apps only for them to meet up with those men physically and things to go left, things to turn tragic by a lot of those women never being able to return home to see any of their family members. And even worse, a lot of those women would usually end up murdered. And after listening to this last sister's story, this just also goes to show how a lot of people on dating apps are so deceitful and cunning, and how they are so easy to finesse matches, people they may happen to match with and go out on dates with, especially us brothers, how deceiving and conniving we could be when it comes to meeting someone off a dating app of the opposite sex. Might I add, there has also been stories about homosexuals meeting off of dating apps only for things to usually wind up fatal and tragic as well. So it applies to also homosexual couples as well. Needless to say, whenever for some of you who, because a whole lot of people now, they don't believe in walking up to the other person to get to know the other person due to how we have been so entitled and privileged to have social media right at our fingertips and smartphones. When dating apps, if you do plan on going that route still, which a lot of you will still continue to do regardless, especially ladies, please, and I do mean please, sincerely be very careful. Even if the conversation with your match while sending the other person text messages prior to meeting up with them or arrange to meet up with them on a date, please be very cautious still and mindful, because there are so many sick and crazy people out there nowadays, to the extent where sometimes it's better to not have anyone you're dealing with, from having a significant other to having a friend, due to how there are so many psychopaths out there and how unpredictable and crazy people are nowadays, especially with the popularity of both social media and dating apps. And sometimes these same people who you may match with may happen to appear to be so nice of a person, so innocent of a person, especially that person may say on their profile, their dating profile, how much of a Christian and how spiritual they are, even by showing several pictures to justify how spiritual they may be or how much of a Christian they may be. Some of those people, in some instances, could end up being some of the most dangerous people once you were to get to go out with them and become just get to know them. Anytime you may call yourself trying to meet up with these people that you may match with on social media or via also dating apps, some of these same people that claim to be so much into the Lord and so much of a Christian wind up usually showing you their really true colors, usually wind up being full of demonic spirits, because that's a perfect example of how not only this God work in mysterious ways, but must I also remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that Satan's ways are just as mysterious, mysterious as the Most High's, as God's. Let's not get it twisted, because Satan is just as mysterious as God. Anyways, I'm going to show one last clip pertaining to this topic. So let me share my screen again, and I'm out of here after that. By the way, happy Friday to a lot of you all, a lot of you guys.
You think you've had a hard time dating?
I'm glad I'm out the game, Goose. So last year I was on a dating app. I think it was Bumble. I was talking to this guy. Everything was good. We was on the same page about everything. We was clicking as we was talking to the app, right? He asked me what high school I went to. We knew a lot of the same people. Keep that in mind. He asked for my number. Cool. He texts me. He says, I'm not really a texter. Can I call you? Cool. I'm not a texter either. As soon as we got on the phone, things are immediately different from when we were messaging on the app because he just talked about himself the entire time. Don't you know people who think their life is so amazing and think that they are so amazing, where they won't even let you get a word in? And it's like, dang, I'm pretty cool too. Like, you don't care about that. But he's yapping. He's telling me where his mom works at, where his grandma retired from, his first couple dogs in his childhood. And this is where a lot of men dig themselves in their own ditch because they don't know how to shut up. So he starts talking about an ex from 2019. This is 2023, mind you. This story made my antennas go up. He said that he dated this girl. They were long distance. He lived in Maryland and she lives in North Carolina. So he would always come and visit her. And of course, he would get a hotel. But she was like 27 or 28. She was pushing 30 and she lived with her parents, and her parents would not let her stay the night in the hotel. He did not like this. He would constantly talk to her about it, like, you need to move out. I don't like, you're grown. Why do you need your parents' approval to stay in a hotel? The girl goes back and tells her dad what he said. Her dad proceeds to text him and says, I don't appreciate what you said to my daughter and how I run my household. This is how I run my household, and she's not spending the night. Tell me why he says, the first thing that came to my mind was to send her father a video of her giving me slip slurp. Honestly, I was literally too stunned to speak. Him to say that to somebody that he was pursuing and to ask my opinion on if he should have sent the video, he definitely not right in the head. So I'm like, did you really ask me that? He's like, no, I didn't send it. I didn't send it. I'm just saying that came in my head. That came in my head to send it. So he immediately changes the subject because we done changed to 150 subjects since we've been on the phone for like 20 minutes. Please don't ask me why I stay on the phone. I think I was doing it for the plot. So going back to high school, he know a lot of people that I went to high school with because he played baseball with them on the baseball team. Well, he knew girls that played softball. So he asked me if I knew this particular girl. Just say her name was Angel. I'm like, oh yeah, I know Angel. Like, and we even talk to this day. Like, she's a nurse. I'm a social worker. We have a lot of the same clients. So he's like, yeah, she used to like me. I'm like, how you know she liked you? He's like, because she kept inviting me to her softball game and I finally showed up and then she had her boyfriend there. But it was weird that she invited me and her boyfriend was there, but I look better than him. I look better than him. Mind you, he was 32. 32 talking like he was 12. At this point, I said it was time to get off the phone. I was tired. Little did he know I was not tired. I was getting my fingers ready to block him. Y'all, please tell me if I'm wrong. The way I'm thinking, I feel like he was already out of his mind. So if I would have told him, like, oh, I don't think this is going to work, I feel like what happened in the end was going to happen regardless. So I blocked them and I'm like, dodge that bullet. Little did I know the bullet
follow me. Next day, everything was cool. The following day, I started getting all these text free. I mean, 5 to 7 times a day, a different number was texting me saying, "Why did you block me?" He had to be making hella text free accounts, text now accounts. It was ridiculous. I wasn't responding, I was blocking the numbers. He just kept on going every day. A different number was texting me. Then at one point, he was sending D pics. It got to the point where I was emailing text now and text free with this man's name and number saying this person is not using your platform for good. And they're like, yeah, we see it. We're going to block him. You won't get any more messages from him. But they wouldn't stop because he was using Google numbers. He was using all types of numbers. It was crazy. So this literally went on from June to around Thanksgiving because the last text he sent me was Happy Thanksgiving. So I changed my number. And I was so sad because I had that number ever since I was in fucking high school. He also found me on TikTok. One time I logged back into Snapchat after like years, and then I saw that he sent me a friend request. It was crazy. I won't say don't online date because I met my current man off a dating app and things are going really good. But you just need to be mindful and do background searches. And I'm just happy I didn't get to the point where I went out with him in person. Like I never met him a day in my life, and I'm so happy.
With that being said, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Good